Breaking news. In a move that's sending shockwaves through global markets, Donald Trump has announced sweeping tariffs on imports from 60 countries, marking America's most aggressive protectionist stance since the Great Depression. The announcement, which includes a 20% tariff on European cars and auto parts, has drawn immediate and fierce criticism from international leaders. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, speaking from a summit in Samarkand, Uzbekistan, delivered a stark warning. "We will not stand idly by while the United States dismantles the global trade order we've built together since World War II. The new tariffs target major economic powers including China, India, Japan, South Korea, and the European Union, while imposing a 10% tariff on the rest of the world. This dramatic shift in U.S. trade policy is already having significant economic repercussions, with ING Bank slashing its Eurozone GDP growth forecast for next year from 1.4% to 1%. Von der Leyen emphasized that the EU is finalizing its first package of countermeasures, initially focused on the steel sector. "As the world's largest single market, we must defend ourselves against this disruption," she stated, adding that the EU is particularly concerned about the potential flood of cheaper exports from China and other nations suddenly locked out of U.S. markets. The impact on consumers and businesses is expected to be substantial, with higher prices predicted for everyday items from groceries to medicines. The EU's trade negotiator, Maroš Šefčovič, is scheduled to meet with U.S. officials to discuss the situation, but early indicators suggest limited room for compromise. This escalation in trade tensions represents a significant departure from decades of post-war economic cooperation, with analysts warning of potential long-term damage to transatlantic relations. Markets are bracing for increased volatility, as both sides appear prepared for a prolonged trade conflict. Here's a 1875-character news story based on the input. Breaking news from Brussels. The European Union is preparing a massive counterstrike against Trump's universal tariffs, with German automakers leading the charge. Our sources within the EU Commission reveal a strategic plan targeting multiple American industries, potentially cutting U.S. exports to Europe by nearly half. The stakes couldn't be higher. In 2024, U.S. EU trade hit a staggering $1 trillion, with Germany alone exporting $210 billion to American markets. Now, this entire economic ecosystem faces disruption as tensions escalate on both sides of the Atlantic. European Commission. Vice President Stern warning yesterday signals a dramatic shift in trade relations. "We will no longer follow unilateral escalation. We will use every tool at our disposal to protect our products." The EU's retaliation list reads like a who's who of American industry: automotive, pharmaceuticals, textiles, electronics, steel, aluminum, and even alcoholic beverages. Germany, Europe's industrial powerhouse, is particularly incensed. With annual exports of $210 billion to the U.S. now under threat, Berlin's patience is wearing thin. The German economy minister's statement yesterday was unequivocal. "If America is attacking our automotive sector, we must respond in kind." France, $80 billion in exports, Italy, $52 billion, and Spain, $40 billion, are also bracing for impact. The EU Commission's Trade Commissioner warns that Europe can easily find alternative suppliers for critical materials, suggesting a long-term strategic pivot away from American goods. Brussels is contemplating tariffs ranging from 20% to 30% on American products. This could severely impact U.S. manufacturers, who currently export over $16 billion annually to Europe in industrial inputs alone. The automotive sector faces particular scrutiny, with European officials suggesting targeted measures against U.S.-made vehicles and parts. This trade war comes at a crucial moment for global markets, already strained by various international tensions, including ongoing conflicts in the northern Black Sea region and supply chain disruptions worldwide. In a dramatic escalation of trade tensions, European powerhouses are preparing unprecedented retaliatory measures against U.S. imports, following President Trump's announcement of sweeping tariffs. Our analysis reveals how this economic chess game could hit American consumers where it hurts most: their wallets. According to the Anderson Economic Group, American car buyers could face price increases ranging from $2,500 to $20,000 per vehicle, as new tariffs impact both domestic and imported models. But Europe's response might prove even more painful for American businesses. Germany, leading the charge, is targeting U.S. automotive exports worth $16 billion annually. Berlin's proposed tariffs exceeding 20% could severely impact American giants like Ford and General Motors. This is not just about cars, says our European market analyst. It's about sending a clear message to Washington. France is taking aim at American spirits and wines. Gabriel Peard, president of FEVS, projects a 20% decline in French wine and spirit sales to the U.S., translating to €800 million in losses. The broader EU expects a €1.6 billion hit to exports. Italy and Spain are joining with their own targets. Rome is eyeing America's textile and apparel exports with a 25% tariff that could devastate U.S. fashion brands. Spain is targeting agricultural products, threatening U.S. corn, soy, and meat exports valued at $3.5 billion in 2024. The EU's coordinated response demonstrates a united front against what European leaders view as aggressive U.S. trade policies. This is not just about economics anymore, notes our trade correspondent. It's becoming a test of political will. President Macron's meeting with affected business sectors at the Élysée Palace underscores the seriousness of these measures. European leaders are targeting specific industries to create political pressure in key U.S. states. Market analysts warn that this tit-for-tat approach could spiral into a full-blown trade war, affecting global supply chains and consumer prices worldwide. As both sides dig in their heels, the economic stakes continue to rise. Good evening, viewers. Breaking news on the escalating trade tensions between the United States and Europe. Today, we're examining how Swedish and American tech companies are caught in the crossfire of a major trade dispute. European Commission documents reveal plans for tariffs of 15 to 25% on U.S. electronics and semiconductor components. This move could significantly impact American tech firms and chip manufacturers, responding to Trump's universal tariff announcement. Irish Prime Minister Michel Martin noted that over $4.2 billion in goods and services crossed the Atlantic daily. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson stated, "Americans can listen to music on Swedish Spotify, and we Swedes can listen to the same music on our American iPhones. That's why I deeply regret the U.S. path toward higher tariffs." Germany leads European imports to the U.S. at $85 billion annually, followed by France at $45 billion, Italy at $25 billion, Spain at $15 billion, and Sweden at $8 billion. These nations represent over 60% of U.S. EU trade. The impact on U.S. exports is substantial. Current exports show $16 billion in steel and aluminum, $26 billion in automotive parts, and $20 billion in pharmaceuticals heading to Europe. If Brussels implements retaliatory tariffs, American exporters could see sharp declines across these sectors. Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen criticized Washington's stance, stating, "Instead of building walls, we must break down barriers. Europe will stand united and respond firmly." The tariffs affect beyond Europe. Brazil and Colombia face 10% tariffs, while Côte d'Ivoire and Ecuador confront tariffs of 21% and 10%. Swiss luxury goods will see a 31% tariff increase. Despite international pressure, President Trump remains committed to his tariff strategy, setting the stage for a prolonged global trade conflict. Breaking news on the escalating trade tensions between the United States and European Union. Our sources in Brussels reveal an aggressive retaliation plan taking shape against President Trump's universal tariffs. The EU is targeting sensitive American exports, with pharmaceutical giants squarely in the crosshairs. The numbers are staggering. American pharmaceutical exports to Europe reached $45 billion last year. Brussels is considering hitting these vital medical supplies with new tariffs, potentially driving up healthcare costs across the continent. European powerhouses Germany and France are leading the charge. The German economy minister called U.S. tariffs extremely unilateral and unfair. French officials matched this stance, promising a punch-for-punch response. Let's break down the potential targets. American textiles, currently a $12 billion market in Europe, could face 25% tariffs. Electronics exports, worth $18 billion annually, are also on the chopping block. European officials are eyeing American whiskey and bourbon. With $6 billion in annual sales at stake, a 25% tariff could devastate these iconic American industries. Wine producers in France, still smarting from previous U.S. tariffs, are pushing for this move. Sweden is joining the fray. Their trade minister emphasized EU solidarity, suggesting Nordic support for retaliatory measures. This unified European front signals a significant shift in transatlantic relations. Economic analysts project potential EU tariffs could impact up to $80 billion worth of American goods. Brussels indicates they'll be strategic rather than comprehensive, targeting specific sectors for maximum political impact. The message from Europe is clear. They're ready to match Trump's protectionist measures step by step. This trade war is heating up, and American businesses are bracing for impact. In a significant escalation of global trade tensions, the European Union is preparing massive retaliatory tariffs against U.S. products, potentially affecting over $150 billion in American exports. This development comes as a direct response to the Trump administration's trade policies. According to Brussels officials, the EU is coordinating an unprecedented response among member states. Key European leaders, including the German Chancellor, French President, Italian Prime Minister, and Spanish Prime Minister, are holding regular teleconferences with EU Commission officials to expand their countermeasures list. The stakes are enormous, with EU-US trade approaching $1 trillion annually. Automotive and advanced technologies represent nearly one-third of this exchange, while sectors like steel, aluminum, food, and textiles make up the remainder. The proposed European tariffs, ranging from 22% to 25%, could severely impact American exporters. Market analysts warn this could trigger a devastating chain reaction, affecting U.S. production and employment. The Trump administration's potential response might escalate tariffs from 10% to 30% on European goods, including cheese, wine, pasta, cosmetics, and motor equipment. Economic historians draw parallels to the Smoot-Hawley tariffs during the Great Depression, cautioning that once protectionist measures begin, their impact becomes unpredictable. Both sides face potential losses. American exporters could lose market access, while European consumers might face higher prices for U.S. goods. EU Trade Representative Marashvchovich will meet with member states' ambassadors next week to finalize a common retaliation list, requiring approval from the EU Council and Parliament. Brussels officials emphasize this isn't their preferred course, but argue it's necessary given Washington's stance. The situation marks one of the most tense periods in transatlantic relations, with allies pushing back against Trump's America First policies. As one EU official noted, "If we lose, let them lose too." In a dramatic escalation of global trade tensions, the European Union is preparing to launch substantial retaliatory tariffs against U.S. products by month's end, abandoning its long-held diplomatic middle ground. This marks a significant shift in EU-US relations, with European leaders taking a confrontational stance against Trump's trade policies. The emerging trade war, described by BBC and Reuters as the most severe since the Great Depression, has sent shockwaves through global markets. European Commission President von der Leyen warned that American products rejected by the EU might flood Asian and Middle Eastern markets, potentially triggering price dumping effects. Internal EU discussions reveal complex negotiations, with Germany focusing on automotive sector protection, while France advocates for wine industry safeguards. Despite varying national interests, Trump's universal tariffs have created unity among EU member states. The impact is visible in European markets, with the Stoxx 600 falling 1.4% following Trump's announcement. German sportswear giant Adidas saw a 10.4% decline, while the shipping sector, represented by Maersk's Eurozone index, plummeted 7.55%. The automotive sector, initially down 2%, traded 0.6% lower after Trump's 25% vehicle import tariffs took effect. Banking sectors dropped 3.3%, though utilities shares rose 1.6% as investors sought safer havens. Healthcare stocks gained 0.17% after pharmaceutical products were exempted from reciprocal tariffs. The euro strengthened against the dollar, reaching 1.0802, its highest since October 9. The EU's response mirrors Canada's recent tough stance against Tesla, suggesting a broader pushback against American economic dominance. With Trump's announcement of tariffs affecting 180 countries and territories, including 20% on EU goods and 10% on UK imports, the stage is set for a prolonged period of market volatility. Market analysts are particularly concerned about overcrowded customs warehouses and stagnant transportation networks, indicating significant supply chain disruptions ahead. In a significant escalation of global trade tensions, the European Union is preparing a robust response to President Trump's universal tariff policies, potentially setting the stage for what experts warn could be the most severe trade crisis since the Great Depression. The EU's stance is clear. They won't merely observe as trade dynamics shift against their interests. They're finalizing plans to implement additional tariffs, ranging from 20 to 25% on critical American exports. These measures target automobiles, steel, aluminum, pharmaceuticals, textiles, electronics, and spirits. Major European economies, including Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and Sweden, are coordinating their response at the ambassadorial level. These measures could significantly impact U.S. exporters and drive up prices for American products in European markets. The situation presents two scenarios. Either this tension will force both parties to negotiate, potentially leading to a new free trade agreement, or it could spiral into a full-scale trade war with global repercussions. This situation raises questions about international trade relations. Will the EU's countermeasures prove justified, or will they trigger a trade crisis? Will the Trump administration maintain its stance or reconsider given European retaliation? The implications extend beyond U.S. EU relations. These tariff disputes could reshape global trade patterns, affecting inflation rates, consumer prices, and geopolitical balances. The situation remains delicate given global instability, including the conflict between Russia and its former partner from the West, which has strained international economic cooperation. The outcome of these trade tensions could reshape the global economic landscape. Europe's determination appears unwavering, signaling their readiness to protect their economic interests against what they perceive as unfair U.S. trade practices. Stay tuned for updates on this evolving situation. Your engagement in this discussion is valuable. Share your thoughts, subscribe, and enable notifications to stay informed about these developments affecting markets worldwide.